Hello, guys and gals, and welcome to another episode of Unique Items. Today we're going to be going over another unique item, which is the Basilisk. The Basilisk is a new unique item that comes from the Infernal Hells. It does drop from regular areas, but it seems to drop more specifically from the new game mode, which you use the Infernal Compasses to get to, and it comes from that chest at the end of that dungeon. Now, the Basilisk is a two-handed staff, and it does have a massive 130% damage to crowd control enemies on it, which is freaking nice. It also comes with 24% earth attack speed, so 16 to 25% earth attack speed, which is obviously going to apply to all of your earth abilities. You also get a massive 80 to 100% critical strike damage, a 140% physical damage, so 125 to 170%. We also get a 21 to 30% critical strike chance against stunned enemies, which I don't really particularly like anything CC based, but that is going to give you a pretty healthy chunk of critical strike chance as long as the enemy is stunned, which you get tons of stunning. And Petrify technically counts as a stun, by the way, so it's kind of silly. They just kind of combine the two together. And the special effect on this is when you first hit an enemy with an earth skill, petrify them for 3 seconds. Petrifying an enemy additionally deals 24,060 damage, physical damage. Well, did she feed her children? And well, did her children feed her? Interesting. Scotland folktale. I see. I kind of read that wrong. Well, did she feed her children? And well, did her children feed her? I get it. So basically what this is it's kind of a really interesting item that's going to be based around, obviously, earth skills. And if you were to use this with an earth build, like, for instance, my earth build, you would get some pretty crazy petrifications going on. Now, I'm not entirely in love with the idea of something that only works when you apply a crowd control effect, because of course crowd control effects don't really apply to bosses, which is one of the big issues. But as you can clearly see here, like when I'm attacking the targets, like if I go to multiple training dummies, they get petrified literally on the first attack. They're all stunned, as you can see, as soon as you hit them. And then of course the stuns that you get from this are going to, of course, give you some bonuses. Like, for instance, if you were building off of the stun damage, there's definitely a lot of ways that you can build off of stun damage on the Druid tree. My personal thinking on this, though, is that since it doesn't work versus bosses, that's not really the best. But as you can see, we do have earth skills increase damage to stun monsters, right? We also have like things like the wild earth spike causes a second earth spike to be summoned when you hit a stunned enemy. You also have additional creation of fortification when you hit a stunned enemy, and so forth and so on. And there's just so many things that have to do with like primal landslide, the terror modes. When you immobilize or stun an enemy, you gain a terror mode, each hit by, blah, blah, blah. So the entire earth tree is based around these stuns. You get tons of extra damage. You get tons of extra things like fortification, bonuses to pretty much everything for stunning an enemy, right? So there definitely is a very strong build that could potentially be made around the Basilisk to give you some extremely high damage for, like, obviously when you stun enemies. And you could lean into that if you wanted to. But the problem with leaning into that is that, just like in the past, you're going to be in a situation where your damage is going to be really good versus like trash mobs. Maybe even pretty decent against elites. But the problem is that when you get to the boss, none of this is really going to work on it. I mean, obviously you can, in fact, stagger the boss, and eventually you would, because if you have a large number of ways to stun monsters, like, for instance, with the Basilisk, you're going to be able to dish out a pretty large amount of damage through those stuns when they're staggered. But whenever they're not staggered, it's going to be pretty pathetic. And the staggers don't even really last that long, which kind of sucks. Sorry, my throat hurts. It's been hurting me today. Been streaming for like a million hours. The extra damage when you petrify them, though, is rather interesting. And on top of that, you can get stuns in a myriad of ways, which is kind of interesting. You can also, of course, utilize the petrify ability, which is going to give some pretty nice bonuses. And you can also get things like petrify duration, which I have. I was pretty sure I had petrify duration on one of my items, but I guess not. But you can get Petrify duration, and you can also get Petrify cooldown reduction. So the interesting thing about this is that your Petrify ability now becomes a heavy damage ability in lieu of this, because of course you're dealing out the 26,472 petrification damage whenever you petrify a monster, right? So if you're in battle and you obviously hit your petrify ability, then boom, as you can see, you get a massive pump of damage to everything that was petrified within that circle. So this is not just when you attack with earth skills, this is also obviously anytime you stun with an earth skill, and there are tons of different ways to stun with earth skills. You can of course even add in crowd control effects through your items, like for instance you can add in, see here I have a chance to, do I not have any on here? There you go. Lucky hit, chance to freeze. You can also do lucky hit, chance to stun. So if you were to stack on lucky hit, chance to stun, lucky hit, chance to stun, lucky hit, chance to stun on 3 pieces of equipment, that means that pretty much every single earth skill that you have, no matter what it is, would have a chance to stun, even if the earth skill doesn't have its own innate chance to stun. So you would be able to stun with things like trample. Even if trample can't stun, you would be able to stun with boulders. You could stun, obviously, with the explosion from earthen bulwark. You could stun with pulverize if you convert it into a earth skill. You can stun with earth spike or maul. And it does make for a very interesting effect, especially when you consider how much damage you can potentially do. I mean, just to give you an idea, unbuffed, not really doing anything. Let's cast a storm skill first, so we get like a nice little bonus on the earth skills. And then we're going to go like this, and I'm going to hit my petrify. And as you can see, I got a 1 million over there on this one. The non-crits weren't really as high, but that's still really freaking good. And it's certainly not something to shake a stick at. I do think that there's a build to be had here. I would probably have to create this build and do a little bit of theory crafting myself. Of course, you guys can do theory crafting. That's what these videos are for. Obviously, you can pull up the video, hear my thoughts on these items, get an idea of what they could be useful for. Maybe I spark an idea in you. If you guys come up with a really cool theory craft for this item, feel free to post it on the video. I'd love to see your theory crafts, as well as later you guys can look at mine. All in all, it's an interesting addition to the game. I do feel like the item needs some sort of additional thing here, like at the bottom that says, like, if you hit a boss, the boss also takes 26,472 damage, like once every 3 seconds or something. Because it does seem like the stuns happen like once every 3 seconds. I'm not sure if you noticed. So like when you hit the monster with like your first earth skill, like they get stunned, and then they don't get stunned again afterwards. But then like you can kind of like maintain that stun on them. You see how just like the stun is just kind of like staying above his head. But you can't like immediately reapply the stun. It has to be applied after a certain duration. It's an interesting one. There's a lot more interesting uniques, though, this season. And we'll have to see if they do a little bit of changes to the Basilisk in the future. But this is the 1.5.0 patch for the Basilisk. As always, I do appreciate you guys and gals watching my videos. Even when we're just talking about the stone staff, the Basilisk. It's a snake. Snake that turns into stone. If you guys are unaware, the Basilisk is a snake that turns into stone. And as always, be sure to hit that like button. Be sure to hit that subscribe button. And as always, keep watching.